an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, chapters 17, 18, and 19. In these chapters, we have got a real desperate plan on the part of Coriolanus. He drops his handkerchief into the tank of snakes, just thinking that maybe, perhaps, it's going into the arena and maybe, perhaps, it could help. And it does, but we don't yet know what it cost him. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Are you coming to the tree? They strung up a man, they say, who murdered 3. Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree where a dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you?
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Rashawn.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
We're getting into it now.
We're getting into some stuff. Some unpleasant
I want to check
stuff.
in with you. Yeah, indeed, yes. I wanted to check in with you because you had, even theorized earlier on in the book, maybe we don't even get to the games until the very end of the book. But there's 30 chapters, and we are on 17, and we're in the middle of the games at this point.
Yeah, day 4, I think.
Yeah, so what do you think, the rest of the book is?
Well, I'm not sure how much longer we're going to be in the arena. I mean, there was so much time is spent with everybody seemingly just hiding, and I was starting to think this could just go on forever. And there doesn't seem to be, up until these chapters at least, anything to force the tributes out of their hiding spaces. So they're coming out when they're good and ready, when they think it's safe,
right? When
they think they can snatch food or take down a foe. So I was like, well, shit, maybe this just drags on for quite some time. But we got a lot of action, plus the snakes. To answer your question, I really don't know. Maybe what happens is they come out of the games, and if the game is not the duration of the book, then I guess Lucy could die, and the rest of the book is just about Snow and his reaction to losing her in the games, and what kind of and how that drives him to become whatever he is. Or she's the victor, and then we have to watch what happens to her after the game, and whether or not a victory tour. I don't know if that's a thing yet. It hasn't been mentioned.
No, that is not a thing yet.
So I don't know if maybe we get the first Victor tour, and it's Snow and Lucy traveling around together and getting, and then whatever relationship between them develops more. Maybe he becomes sort of even more disillusioned with the Capitol as he's trying to convince everybody that she is not district trash. She's something special, and he expects her to be treated as such. And when she's not, that further radicalizes him. Or, I'm not really sure. Or maybe they go on tour and they do have a romance, and he thinks he's going to be a different person, and then their romance blows up in some fashion, because I know they don't end up together. So I'm just trying to imagine the different ways in which their relationship, ends.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. If the game is over in a couple of chapters and we still have, a little less 15 or 10, 30 chapters, and we're ending. Next is chapter 20. So we got 10 chapters left. Yeah, like what do they do with Lucy if she wins? They just send her back. Let me ask you a question. Currently, what is the system for victors currently? Do we know for certain?
They get sent home.
They just go home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, maybe Snow comes up with the idea of the tour because he's not ready to let her go yet. And he, because he's so, even though it seems like it's like against his will, like Dr. Gaul is pulling his strings, but he is like actively participating in the sort of birthing of the games as we come to know them.
Right.
And maybe he spins this as another way to capitalize on the success of the games and her popularity. Let's take this show on the road,
Right.
But yeah, those are just some thoughts. I have.
Yeah, it's something that, like, the idea that some of what the games turns into is due to, like, the personal desires of the people who were sponsoring them. Sponsoring is the wrong word. That's the word of the people who are buying them food. Mentoring them. That's the one I want. That is very interesting. And it would make sense, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how that goes.
Yeah.
So we pick up with the rabid former ally of our Lucy Gray. And it's really a shame because this guy was like a real big, sweet, protective dude who was going to be helpful to her, even though they were technically like up against each other.
Right.
And losing him this early and in this way, it's a really scary thing, even to the people outside of the arena, because of what this implies.
Yeah. When the audience realizes that he's rabid, they immediately start to think, of course, about themselves, because that's human nature for most people, and that's what we do. And they start panicking, like, how did he get it? Brought it in from the districts? It's going to infect the whole city. And it turns out poor Jessup had gotten bitten by a raccoon, and that's what happened. He didn't bring it from the districts, and he's not going to infect the whole city, and he didn't eat like anything gross.
There's a point where they're talking, like, because he dies, and I'm just jumping ahead a little bit here, but Lysistrata is talking to Lucky, and he's like, wait, you said it came here? It was at the zoo?
Oh no,
God. It's not Lucky, it's Lepidus. A lot of us have been spending time at the zoo. A raccoon was over by my equipment, scratching around with those weird little hands. You don't have rabies, Lysistrata said flatly. Lepidus made a clawing motion with his fingers. It was touching my fins. I cackled so bad over that. I could just picture him not realizing that he looks like a 9-year-old.
Listen,
you
she says, do you have any fucking questions about Jessup? And fucking is my editorial. And he's like, Jessup, no, I never got near him. Oh, wait, you meant, did you have any thoughts? He asked.
I swear to God.
He is so firmly entrenched in his own panic and sort of sense of self-preservation that he has completely forgotten what he's supposed to be doing in this moment. That has just gone out the window. He's so upset about the idea of rabies being. But we find out that, it had been really pretty gnarly in the Capitol, and it took out some people, a couple dozen, I think he says, which actually, when you think about an entire city, a couple dozen, not to be harsh, you guys, but that's not that bad.
It's really not that many people. But that's how many people died, not how many people got it. So I don't know if it's the number of people infected was very high and they managed to keep them alive.
He mentions that because of the lack of doctors and lack of medication, that people who got it didn't do well, but they were able to come up with a vaccine pretty quickly, and that's what saved the city.
Right.
So it wasn't so much because there's not really. Well, we have a way to treat rabies, like the series of shots, but I don't know if it's explicitly said here that it's something that can be cured, or if you got it, you were just going to pretty much have to just suffer. But yeah, his mentor, Lysistrata, is she really is the MVP here.
She is. She's she because she has parents who are doctors and she's got a very sort of practical mind, immediately accepts the fact that this kid isn't going to win. I am going to do what I can to make sure that your girl wins.
Yeah. Snow comes up with the idea of using the water. And he's about to just spend his whole bank. He's about to like fucking blow his whole nut on water bottles. And she's like, I know I said it. I am not taking it back. And she's like, no, let me do it. You know, he is my tribute after all. And there's no sense wasting your resources. And she just starts bombing the place with drones, with water bottles. And it's effective.
Yeah. So because water, apparently, if you are rabid, just seeing water induces the instinct to swallow, I think is what you saw when you looked up. And you can't swallow.
Yeah, and so it causes
it starts this sort of panic.
Yeah, you start to have these spasms. The reason you can't swallow is because you have these spasms in your throat. And just the thought of it or the sight of it can make the spasms trigger. And that's what makes people look like they're scared of the water, but they're just reacting to like the physical spasms that are happening in their body. Yeah. And then how does he he
falls over the edge of like a high area,
right? Because she goes running up those stands to get away from him. She goes all the way across all that debris, and she's like up at the top where the press box would have been, and he had been trying to follow her up there, and then this happens, and he falls and breaks his back. Right.
I feel so bad for this kid because it's unclear to me how much of his mind is still like coherent. So I don't know if he understands why she's running away and he's chasing her. Like, what's the matter? What is going on? Or if because I know rabies can cause you to become violent. If it's because he's feeling the urge to attack her, I don't know what the instinct is here.
Yes.
But I just feel really bad for him because either way, it's something that he's probably a little bewildered by his own reaction.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah. It's a moment when Lysistrata is just like, I don't want him to die alone. And Snow says something like, she won't let that happen. It's not her style. And then Lucy Gregg does end up going kind of close to where Jessup is lying and starts to sort of comfort him into death, telling him that he can sleep. You know, she'll take watch. And it says that something that she said seemed to register her voice, or perhaps the repetition of the words she had been speaking to him over the last 2 weeks. But his face eases and his eyes flutter, and she's just like, that's right, let yourself go. And she does. She kind of like lets him release into death. And it is it's reminiscent of, you know, Katniss and Rue, sort of. You know, it's
definitely.
It definitely feels a little bit like that. And then she pours some water on his face and like washes his face, and then she takes the handkerchief that Snow had given her and covers Jessup's face with it. And it says to hide it from the audience. And again, that sort of like compassion that the tributes are able to display in the arena when they're supposed to be the savages, which is something that you had mentioned last episode, and we get just like another example of it. And we have Reaper, floating in and out of these chapters, not getting much action except for the little bit he has with Lamina or Lamina.
That's the way they say it in the audiobook, but I don't know.
But outside of that interaction, he's moving the bodies and like lining them up. And I want that to be a sign of something noble. Mm-hmm. So I'm choosing to believe it is. Especially,
it's really unclear. I don't know if it's like, it could be just to keep track of how many people have died as well.
It could very well be that, I'm like I said, I'm choosing to think that there is something like, sort of righteous that is happening there. Something that's just sort of, because he takes a flag and covers somebody.
The flag is a trade for cheese.
Oh, right.
For the girl that's up on the beam, just exposed to the sun this whole time.
Right. And he ends up, that's right. Okay. But we jumped ahead.
Yes. So I love to, at first, when they see that he's rabid, rabies, how'd he get that? Brought it in from the districts, I bet. Great. Now it'll infect the whole city. And just the assumption, of course, that it's the districts that are like dirty and still have disease and they're bringing it in. And it's like, no, you guys treated him like livestock. Mm-hmm. So he got infected,
Yeah.
And Coriolanus, I love that when he says she won't leave him to die alone, it's not her style. He's saying that with a little bit of frustration.
Yeah.
He just wishes she would leave him alone. Like he's just, wants this over.
Yeah. He can't say it out loud though. He's just like, please go back and hide in your tunnel. Like, this is the time, mm-hmm. Please run. And he gets like frustrated because he couldn't even like really wallow in how much he wanted her to leave because Lysistrata is standing right there, so he has to pretend like he has to put on this act, and then the act ends up really working out for him because not only does she send the water, but she sends a bunch of food in as well. So after Jessup dies, Lucy picks up water and food and like as much as she can carry. And then Reaper shows up at the end of the arena and she's like, well, time to go, and bounces.
Yeah.
And Reaper sees her but doesn't chase her. Instead, he goes over and takes the rest of the water bottles that are out there.
And the interview between Lysistrata and Lepidus, do you have any thoughts? I do. What I'd like people to know about Jessup is that he was a good person. He threw his body over mine to protect me when the bombs started going off in the arena. It wasn't even conscious. He did it reflexively. That's who he was at heart, a protector. I don't think he ever would have won the games because he'd have died trying to protect Lucy Gray.
Mm.
Oh, like a dog or something, Lepidus nodded. A really good one. No, not like a dog, like a human being, said Lysistrata. Lepidus eyed her, trying to decipher whether she was joking. Huh.
Oh my God.
Lucky, any thoughts from headquarters?
Oh my fucking God, you guys. So I like to, I think we talked a little bit about this in the last episode, where not all of the mentors, but a few of them are also being radicalized by their exposure to these tributes, right? They're getting to experience that they're humans, that they're part of humanity, and it's making them question like everything that they've ever been told. And I feel like Lysistrata may have been one of the ones that was kind of cold on the games to start with.
Yeah.
So it was not a huge leap for her to end up here in this moment. But I feel like it's really important that she's like saying this. She's stating this like on broadcast TV. Like it's a big deal that she's saying this. You know, it's one thing to say it amongst your classmates, you know, but to look into the camera and say it declaratively, you know, is huge. And the fact that Lepidus is just like, weird.
Yep. Very much so. So the move over to, I love this. Lucky is caught by the camera gnawing on a stubborn hangnail. Oh, what? Hey, nothing upstairs at present. And I was like, I feel like that line means a lot about him a little bit. And Lysistrata gets her stuff and takes off and is just like, I'm glad I'm out of it. You were a good mentor, like a good ally. And eventually they examined one another with new eyes now that the plinth prize was in play, each hoping not to just have a victor, but to be a victor. The same thought must have occurred to the game makers because Lucky reclaimed the screen to do a rundown of the remaining tributes in their mentors. The list went chronologically by district. Our tech district tributes have us all wondering, what did they do with those drones? Said Lucky. And there's just a sort of like montage, for lack of a better way of saying this, with the book of each of them like coming up and their pictures. And I do enjoy that there's a point. Not now, I don't think, but eventually. Oh, no, it is now. Some of the mentors groaned when they realized their unflattering student ID photos had been downloaded, which I did think was funny. Coriolanus for himself, like he's injured on his face right now, so it's better for them to use that photo because he doesn't look as beat up. But
when it's his turn and his picture finally does come up, because of course, you know, he's going to go last. He's just like, it's not great. It's not bad. But there's a dazzling photo of Lucy Gray singing at the interview. And then they get told that the award for the most popular goes to Snow and Lucy Gray because they've been sort of like ranking them as their pictures have shown up on screen. And we find like Lepidus, I guess, or maybe it's Lucky. I'm not sure who's speaking, but somebody says that District 4 tributes are sailing high. Lamina is still on her beam. The crowd favorites Lamina and Plenty Harrington are joined by District 7 boy Treach and his mentor. You know, so they are putting these other districts ahead of Lucy as far as like how well they're doing in the game, because Lucy hasn't really been doing anything in the games yet. But she remains the most popular and a fan favorite, even though she has not really been engaged in anything since she's been in the arena. And Snow is like, most popular. I mean, that's cool and all, but it's not particularly intimidating.
Yeah, but I mean, after the whole thing with Jessup, she gets a ton of you know, food and stuff. So it does seem to be making an impact,
right?
Even if he doesn't really seem to credit that as being particularly valuable.
Yeah. And he is also like, you know, it sucks, but with Jessup gone, it makes it easy for Lucy to hide herself. You know, so we got that going for us now.
Yes. So eventually Corio goes home and it's only Tigris who is awake. His grandmother's already gone to bed. And he, I guess, like, hadn't even seen her since the whole thing with going into the arena.
She was awake, but he said he couldn't talk about it. And he hasn't given her the story about what happened yet.
Right, okay.
But
and yeah, he says, I know that you want to know, but, like, I really don't know if it's cool to tell you. I feel like it could be dangerous for you.
Yeah.
And I think that I may have said this in the last episode because I overread a little bit about the shirt. But I may not have mentioned it, but she talks here about how she can look at his shirt and the way that it's been damaged in different places and tell what occurred, that he got dragged here, he got stabbed here, he got
this is really, really good.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
Like the idea of the clothing speaking to her.
Yeah.
The tear, I'd say you got it caught on barbed wire, probably at the barricade. The blood here on the cuff, I don't think it's yours. I think you had to do something really awful in there.
Yeah.
And I keep wondering how it came to this, that my baby cousin, who wouldn't hurt a fly, has to fight for his life in the arena.
Yeah. Yeah. This characterization of him as wouldn't hurt a fly is so wild to hear, knowing what we know of Snow. And I'm curious if that is true, or if that is just through the lens of a loving family member. I haven't seen Snow do anything to hurt anybody, yet.
Sure.
But has acted with such self-interest so consistently that also, this is a personal thing. I think I have a tendency, and I don't think I'm alone, to automatically kind of marry the idea of selfishness with the ability to harm other people. I think I tend to make them like they go hand in hand, and maybe they do, but so for me, it's difficult for me to think of Snow as somebody who wouldn't hurt a fly. And this character of this teenage Snow that I've met, even though he hasn't actively harmed anyone, physically at least, with the exception of Bobbin, whose head he smashed in. You know what I mean? Like, if I was just like, girl, wouldn't hurt a fly, he would kill all the flies immediately. What are you talking about?
Yep.
And I don't know if I'm being fair or not. Like, I'm open to critique on that. Like, it's very possible I am just, again, can't unknow what I know about what happens to Snow as a man. So it's very, very difficult for me to take this seriously. But it says a lot about Tigress, I think.
Yes, that's the thing that I think is, like, in the end, our takeaway is that I think she's projecting a lot of her own personality onto him. And just, I wonder if she would have made it out, if she were the one that had gone in there. Yeah. I don't know.
I think that because she's an older cousin, I think that her years of taking care of him from a very small age, and everything that she's been willing to do to protect him and protect their family, I think she is looking at him through very, very rose-colored glasses. And even his self-serving actions, because when he's home, it's not just himself he's trying to save. He's also trying to save his family. So I think if you're family, you may not look at his actions as being selfish because you're going to benefit from them as well, right? Like if he comes up, the whole family comes up. So what I see as selfish, she might really view as someone who's willing to do anything for the benefit of their family. And that's going to,
that's true. Yeah.
But to your question about whether or not she would have made it out, like, do you think you would have made it out of the arena if you were in his place? Could you?
I don't know, because I feel like I am the kind of person who could probably get pretty violent and vicious if I were pushed in the right way. Mm-hmm. But I don't see myself feeling good about the games in the first place. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that might make me less like aggressive in the moment because I'm carrying that kind of guilt.
Right.
About what's going on, that it would just cause me to sort of pull my punches a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think, I agree. I agree with like going into the arena with such distaste for it that I would be loath to have to pick up a weapon to defend myself.
Yeah.
But also, I know that I absolutely would have done everything in my power to beat the shit out of that kid. Like, absolutely. You know what I mean?
This is where I'm coming down is like, I think probably my sense of self-preservation would kick in and I would just do what needed to be done. But I can't be totally sure it would be in time to actually save me.
Gotcha.
I feel like I might pull back a little bit too. And then once I'm like, oh no, this is for real serious, it might be too late by the time I decide to just really get down to business, you know?
Yeah. I've been very fortunate, despite many of my wacky stories, where I have never been, like held up at gunpoint, you know, like I don't have that experience. Thank God. You know, even the places I worked that were robbed, that wasn't like that wasn't my experience, but I have been in situations where someone was attempting to physically harm me, or harm someone that I care about. And I know, based on, at least at that time in my life anyway, there was like zero hesitation. Like, it's scary how quickly your brain can go there, like in a way that you don't really think that you're really even capable of doing. So I don't think I would have hesitated, but I also don't know, because the thing is, when Snow, not to belabor the point, but when Snow has to beat back Bobbin, beat back Bobbin. I'm sorry. It sounded like I was trying to beatbox for a second there, though, and I was just like, "What the fuck?"
More like beatbox, Bobbin, am I right?
But afterwards, he continues to bash this kid's head in, right? And that is what is interesting to me. And you can chalk it up to like the adrenaline of the moment and all that. Like, there may not have been any deeper thought going on other than this person just tried to kill me, and I am, like, you know, in a state of shock, and adrenaline is coursing through me, and I'm going to keep hitting until I'm certain that you're done. Or if I wanted to, you know, read between lines and put shit that's not on page, you know, one could say there was something triggered in Snow, which is kind of along the lines of a "how dare you." That's the exact sentence I was going to say, was "how dare you." You know.
Yeah. Don't you know who I am?
You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And then, like, look what you made me do. Like, because you didn't know your place. Like, yeah, look what you, yeah. Like, if there was no real, I don't want to say there was no real, because I could have just forgotten it, because my brain is like 2 brain cells, y'all. Dosey around in my noggin. It is not good. And the square dance music is awful. It's just a bad time in there right now. But I don't remember if he...
You know those TikToks where people play, like, real bad on, like, the harmonica? Like Jurassic Park, like... And that's what I'm picturing your square dance music to sound like right now.
That's pretty close. It's pretty fucking close. But we don't get really Snow interrogating...
Come back.
I'm sorry, we don't get Snow interrogating his reaction too much. Just sort of kind of a general feeling of shock, right? But I'm curious, if he stopped for a moment to think of it, would he admit that there was some of that "how dare you" happening? You know, like I'm curious if he is self-aware enough to know that, you know, there was a little of that going on. But
it's a good question.
But he ends up just telling Tigress that he doesn't know that he didn't have a choice. And she's just like, of course I know you didn't have a choice. You would never, like, just do something like that for no reason. And she even says, I hate what they're doing to you. So she sees him as being victimized by these people, putting him in this horrible position of mentor, and then literally putting his life in danger. And then she knows that there's other shit going on that he's not talking to her about. And I guess she sees a change in him that maybe as a reader I can't clock because I don't know him. You know what I mean? But she sees something going on with him that's changing him from the man that she knows him to be or thinks that he is. Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's just Dr. Gaul and just how, like, she's just such a weird force in this whole story.
She's like a little demented fucking devil on his shoulder that's like telling him, like appealing to his worst, not just his worst instincts, but his weaknesses. That's the word I want, right? Like, she's just a very good, I can't even use the word master manipulator anymore, because then that just sends me down a whole fucking, I'll be singing Not Like Us and fucking Euphoria from Kendrick. Like the expression master manipulator is never not going to be a Drake diss now for me. Like, I thank you, Kendrick, for that. But Dr. Gaul, like, knows, like, she
is not like us.
Listen. She needs to be like, not like anybody else ever. There should only ever be one of this, whatever this is.
Agreed.
But she's like, not to take too much responsibility from Snow for his choices, but I honestly, it feels like Gaul is she sees something in him. She sees the ability to make him into something that Gaul thinks is of value. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if it's depravity she sees in him, or if she thinks she can just exploit his weaknesses with how what is the word I want? How grasping he is, how striving he is, like how important it is for him to climb up. She sees all of these things in Snow that she can exploit to get whatever it is she wants out of him. And again, not to absolve him of all responsibility, but she is like sort of creating a monster in real time,
Yeah.
Putting him through this horrible thing at the fucking arena and then being like, yeah, I want a paper on this, BT dubs, It really is. She's so creepy, you guys.
She's so creepy. And I think you're totally right about, like, her seeing something in him. It feels very much like she can tell that there is a sort of, like, brutal edge to him that she can hone, and that if nobody pushes him on that, he could, because, like, he's palling around with Sejanus, and to her eyes, that's not a great sign. Also, the person that he talks to the most throughout this is Lysistrata, who then goes up on stage and is talking about what a person, and when he goes up and talks about Lucy Gray, is talking about how she's not really even district, and making it seem like he sees her as a real person. Now, we know from inside his head that it's coming from a kind of selfish place, but it also does seem to be something he's believing. Right.
It's one of those things where, like, two things can be true at the same time, and it just, like, fucks you up because you're like, how can that be? But yeah,
I think that she's just like sensing that underneath everything, if she pulls the right threads and pokes the right buttons, he could be exactly the kind of, like, she is so overtly terrifying and has so little, like, regard for human life or mercy in her, but he is somebody who could be similar to her in his willingness to see certain people as expendable and keep up a facade of being good and kind. And, I think that there's something really scary about how well she zeroes in on that with him.
She's treating him, and I don't know if I said this before or not, but she's treating Snow almost like one of her mutations.
Ooh.
Like but instead of it being like physical, like what we think may or may not have happened to Clemencia, it's much more like psychological. Like she's turning him, she's taking the shit that's there and then just like, adding a little bit of the sprinkle of this, by putting him in this very traumatic situation to see how he responds and to, trigger a response in him that makes something that was latent, active. She's playing with him like one of her little snakes or weird ass bunnies, pit bull bunnies that she has, it's just beyond upsetting. And it's one of the few areas where I have like actual sympathy for Snow, is this weird ass dynamic that's happening between him and Dr. Gaul. Like whenever the two of them are together, I'm just like, oh boy, you in danger. Like,
yeah. Yeah, very much so. So the chapter ends with Tigress being like, hey, I didn't want to tell you this, but I know that you can just like read it on my face. We got some bad news today, and it turns out that the tax
man
came in for their apartment. Yeah, and they are going to lose their home.
Yeah.
So chapter 18 starts with him being very panicked about how they can come up with the money. And it's mentioned this is the equivalent of Tigress' income for the whole year.
Yeah. That's
the cousins tried to assess what they might still have to sell, but even if they sold every stick of furniture and every keepsake, it would only cover a few months at the most, and the tax bills would keep showing up every month like clockwork.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. And the idea of being evicted because they couldn't pay their taxes is like the ultimate humiliation. Like he would never be able to overcome that shame no matter how well he does in school and how high he rises.
Yeah.
That's just like a humiliation that would never, it'd be too great, too lasting. So he's thinking, all right, we're just going to have to move and maybe we can spin it, some other kind of way. But ultimately in this moment, he's just like, right now, he says, what are we going to do? And Tigress is like, we're not going to do anything until the games are finished,
Yeah.
And then you focus on the prize and I'll handle this end, she says firmly, without saying how exactly she's going to handle it, which circles us back to what are the things Tigress has done and is willing to do to protect her family, which we don't know the answer to that because this book is from Snow's POV, but we talk so much about, and he talks so much rather about all of the things he's willing to do to save his family. And there's like nothing about the things Tigress is willing to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not, I don't know exactly what her plan is, but, we had a conversation about him wondering about whether or not she had ever lowered herself, in his mind to engage in sex work, and then having him immediately be like, I don't want to think about it. Mm-hmm. And then promptly not thinking about it.
Very purposely putting it out of his head. Yeah.
Which honestly, what must that be like? To be like, I don't want to think about it. And then the bad thing just goes out of your brain.
I can do that with some things.
I can only do that with some things I can do that with, but not like grown up, like responsibilities. I'm like, that bill. What bill?
Yeah. Yep. Very much so. All right. So the fucking fact that his grandmother sings this shit every single morning. I don't know how I could stand this.
Oh my God.
But that's how he wakes up, is her singing this. I love this line. Their hopeless financial situation made him accept the tokens Tigress offered without hesitation. why bother pinching pennies when the dollars had fled long ago? And I was like, oof, that's a whole vibe.
Yeah, that's a nice line.
And he's thinking about how, like, maybe the Plinths would give me some money, but I don't think Grandma would allow that. And then, well, you know, maybe I could do something with that still, though. And that comes up a little bit later. And then he's like, you know, I just got to focus on the games. I have to follow Tigress' instructions. She's right about this. Mm-hmm. So, fucking hilarious, heavens be. It's different for me. I checked my list last night. Every single one of the tributes left has had food or at least water, except old no-show Wovie. Where is she anyway? I mean, how would I know if she just curled up and died somewhere in those tunnels? Maybe she's already dead and I'm just sitting here like a jackass playing with my communicuff.
That made me laugh because I was like, I guess they don't have like trackers and shit on them. Mm-hmm. Like we're used to, like, so they're not monitoring their vitals and shit. They don't know their locations at all times like we get in the original trilogy. Imagine like your tribute. This is so morbid, but like literally imagine if that's what happened to your tribute and you don't know and you're just like waiting out the games. It's just like
that would be so grim. You find out eventually, like, oh yeah, she's actually dried out. It seems like she's been dead since like 2 hours after we
find her when they're prepping the arena for next year's games.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
So Lucky Flickerman opened by recapping the remaining tributes and inviting Lepidus to take comments from the mentor pool. Coriolanus was called upon first to respond to the Jessup scare. He made a point of complimenting Lysistrata's brilliant handling of the rabies situation and thanking her for her generosity in the last minutes of Jessup's life. He turned to the section where the fallen mentor sat, asked her to stand, and invited the audience to give her a round of applause. Not only did they oblige, but at least half stood up, and while Lysistrata looked embarrassed, he thought she didn't really mind.
Interesting.
This is... I just have to, just every now and then, really, against my will, take a moment to admire Coriolanus and how he handles shit, because he really is good at this.
Yeah, he's very good at this.
He really is. It makes me deeply uncomfortable how I can hear what he has chosen to do and no, I would have fallen for it. Mm-hmm. You know, like he really, I think he, oh my God, he would have me snowed was what I almost said. But you know what? I stand by it. So then he does the whole but she's not really capital thing. And that seems to work again because she gets more sponsorships. And then, as if unable to stand that much attention being showered on Coriolanus, Pup sat forward and loudly announced that he'd better get Lamina her breakfast and ordered up a storm of food and drink. No one else could compete, as she was the only tribute to be seen in the arena, so it was just one more way in which Pup was annoyed. It gratified Coriolanus that no new pinging came from his rival's cuff. Pup really starts getting on everybody's nerves.
Yeah, he really does. Yeah. The rest of this morning, after Snow has his little interview, he was like, all right, well, they're not going to ask me any more questions for at least 45 minutes. So I'm going to put on my most interested face. And then I'm just going to be thinking about something completely different.
Yes, exactly. So let's see. What if Coriolanus dropped by the Plinths to check on Sejanus' health? That had been a bad cut on his leg. Yes. What if he just dropped by and then saw what happened?
Right. He can't bring himself to admit that there's an idea of blackmailing the Plinths for money. Yeah. So it's not going to be blackmail, but I'm going to give them the opportunity to make me a financial gift of thanks. That's what it will be. And then he gets interrupted in this course of thought because the announcer Lucky is wondering about what the kids from 3 might do with the drone, and the mentor is like, well, they might be able to make flashlights, which would give them an advantage. And right in the middle of his little spiel, Reaper shows up.
Yeah. So this is the part where he cuts down the flag because she's like suffering from pretty bad sunburn.
Yeah. I love that you can't hear what they're saying either. And this came up before because the shit is so janky that it's just not well mic'd. So there's long periods and there's like gaps in the arena where you're just not going to hear what the fuck they're saying. So they're trying to just follow along by like this game of charades and like what happens. And yeah, it ends up being like, hey, I see you up there, all safe, but awfully sunburned. You could use a little protection. Maybe we can work out a deal. And everybody is just watching on the screen like this appears to be some kind of negotiation, but what could it be? And then he climbs up and starts to cut the flag down, or cut part of the flag, I should just say. And the people are aghast.
Yeah. I just love this. It's a perfect like encapsulation of people being mad about the wrong shit, and it makes me like, I can't help but like laugh to you're making these children fight to the death, beat each other to death. And that's not offensive. Cutting the flag is where you're drawing the line. Like, and there are people out there like this.
Oh, yeah.
Really do have this completely warped priority set. And oh man, it is just such a perfect example.
These people are honestly, with no sense of irony, thinking to themselves, this is so unforgivable. We should have a way to punish them. But they're already in the games, and that's the worst punishment we know. So how do you punish somebody that's in the games? And that ends up coming up again for a different reason a little bit later on. But yeah, you're right. The fact that just this disrespect to the flag, this what do you call it? Defacing of the flag is just a bridge too far for the audience.
Yeah. Guys, everybody, come on. Take a second and like think about, okay, sure.
Clemencia's reaction though. What is her deal, you guys?
It's a good question.
What is her deal? She sees this and she's like, this is the dumbest fucking thing. Nobody's going to sponsor him now. She still hasn't sent him anything, which Pup mentions. And she's just like, I'll feed him when he does something that merits fucking feeding. Girl, what is going on there? I know we joked about her turning into a snake and being cold-blooded, but like now I'm just like, how much of it was jokey joke and how much was it like you joked your way into the truth? Like, what is fucking happening?
It's so strange because like it could be actually something changed about her physiology, or it could be that like the thing that can happen to some people, they go through a hardship and instead of making it more compassionate to other people, it makes them be like, well, I don't care. I've been through worse.
Yep.
And they just sort of insulate themselves even more from like everybody else's experiences. Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's really what's happening here, is that she was, because she was attacked by fucking weird ass science snakes, and what else is guys, I apologize.
I don't know why that got me so bad,
but I'm doing my best here.
Weird ass science snakes, indeed.
But it was at the hands of an adult, someone who had power over her. It was a setup. She knows that it was done. She knows she was set up. She knows that the teacher let this terrible thing happen to her. So you're right. She could really just have a gigantic chip on her shoulder at this point. And just is in a place where she cannot feel any empathy for anyone else because of the horrible thing that happened to her. And she got no justice for it. and then coupled with the feelings of abandonment that she had for while she was in the hospital. So maybe it's as simple as that. And you know, it's funny, not funny, but when I talked earlier about how Dr. Gaul is manipulating Snow to see like what comes, what does he become, what can I turn him into? That could very well be happening with Clemencia as well. Not just literally like, can I turn her into a snake? But I did this horrible thing to her. She got no justice. I isolated her on purpose. How terrible can I make her? What can I make her into?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like any of it. And then she ends this moment with Pup being just like, I don't think I have to worry about the food because you got it covered. And it turns out that Reaper has come out and finished negotiations with Lamina, and she gives him some food. She drops down like some bread, some cheese, and some other things, I think.
Yeah.
And he, after a couple of attempts, gets the flag up enough that she can catch it to cover herself, to offer some protection. So we have tributes working together, not necessarily forming an alliance, but working together because each has something the other needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're able to cooperate in this moment. Again, something that these savages aren't really supposed to be able to do.
Yeah, I just want to like keep pointing out that the whole theory here is supposed to be that like once you put them in there, they're going to act like animals, and it's every man for himself, and that's what real human nature is. And we have really seen a whole lot of helping each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's been killing, sure, but it has really been a lot more helping each other than anybody was expecting. So,
yeah.
All right. So, oh God, this is when Lucky has his parrot Jubilee.
Oh my God.
Who isn't really in the most amazing shape.
No. This thing needs to just have a quiet place for its last couple of days, or it to need some medical attention because it's got mange, and it's a depressed creature in the midst of battling mange, perched wordlessly on Lucky's wrist.
Say it. Come on. Hi, handsome. Hi, handsome. I don't think it wants to, Lucky. Perhaps it doesn't find me handsome at all. What? No, he's just shy in front of strangers. Would you like to hold him? The dean leaned back. No. So, Dean Highbottom, what do you make of it all? All what? All this stuff. All this different stuff happening
so
in the
terrible.
Hunger Games.
This is
all of it.
This is so terrible. This is the announcer, y'all. What do you make of the stuff? You know, the stuff that's happening. Come on, please.
So the dean basically is like, with the interactivity of everything, it means we're all in the arena together. Yeah. And Lucky is like, I don't get that. And he just taps his temple and says, think it over. Hi, handsome, squawked Jubilee despondently. Oh, there we go. I told you, didn't I? You did, admitted the dean. And yet it was still unexpected. That, I swear to God, you guys, this fucking dude is one of my favorite parts of this book. He's so pathetic. Oh my God. Just like, you know, he's a flickerman. So, we get a flickerman later on doing an actual good job.
Right.
But man, his predecessor left a lot to be
Look
desired.
how far they had to go, right? They really had it was uphill battle. I like when he talks about, when Dean Highbottom is talking about how the terrain of the arena changed the landscape he's talking about. And he's like, and look, and now we have the barricade and the beam and tunnels. This is a brand new arena, and it's made the tributes behave in a brand new way. And then they talk about also having the drones now. I love that too. The dean spoke the next word slowly, as if to a small child. The fucking shade of it all.
I think that, like, the original games, they literally just put them in like a football stadium on a field and were like, fight to the death? Is that how that used to go?
I think that's how it would have gone this games if they hadn't had the bombing. They're just in like a football field with like no access for anything to run and hide. Nothing else on the field. Just
they're not given weapons, are they?
Yeah, there's weapons there, like out there, because they all go and they grab weapons. Like, you know, Lamina has her axe, and the kids from 4 have tridents.
Right, yeah, and the trident.
But but that's it. It's just like a pile of weapons and a field, and there's nowhere really to be. You know, you can run up and down the stands and maybe hide under the bleachers, depending on how the arena is actually built, but that's it. And so this bombing that happened, which we are saying the rebels did, and not Dr. Gaul being behind it in some way, has really, this is new. Like this way that they have to now coax the tributes into the field of play, which they didn't have to do before. And we all know that this thing that he's talking about now, how it changed the game, that gets carried forward, and they just build on that until we get what the games that we all know. It's so weird to see how this stuff crystallizes and what it then turns into.
It's really strange.
You know, someone just has a thought like, oh, hey, what if we do this? And it changes everything. You know, a fucking teenager in high school said, what if we could bet on it?
Yeah.
And that simple...
Apparently a teenager in high school came up with the original idea for this.
Right. Exactly. That's such a good point. And that the powers that be were like, yes, these kids are onto something. And also, I think it's important that it's children, because there's a certain imagination that children have, a certain ability to think, God forgive me for saying the expression, outside of the box. You know, but they do. Like,
they're disrupting.
Oh my God, girl.
I can't
girl.
I'm trying to channel some Succession speak, and I don't have the heart for it.
My God, I probably couldn't even watch Succession right now if I wanted to. There's so much like corporate jargon. I would probably like have a fit and just like be twitching on the floor in the living room, and Steve would be like, what the fuck happened?
I've been toying with the idea of covering it with Miles, because I feel like he would really have a lot to say. Yeah,
that would be fun. That would be a fun rage listen. And it's so well done and so well acted.
It's really well done.
So where are we?
We had the parrot. How's the weather looking in District 12, Jubilee? They've got snow, Lucky. Snow in July, Jubilee. Coriolanus snow.
Oh my God.
Coriolanus gave the camera a thumbs up when they cut for his reaction.
My God.
He could not believe this was his life.
Same. Honest to God.
Oh,
real talk. Real talk. He could not believe. I love that so much. Just picturing him like doing that fake smile and a thumbs up, because the thumbs up is like never given in sincerity anymore, which is really a shame.
That's true.
I went to a family thing the other day, and one of my family members asked me how I was doing, and I gave like 2 thumbs up and a big smile, clearly indicating that that's like the universal sign of distress. I think it's not even SOS anymore. And then like 2 minutes later, I saw another relative, and I asked her, hey, how you doing? How you been? And she gave me the 2 thumbs up big smile. She didn't see me do it. It was just her response to me. And I was like, holy fucking shit.
Oh no, somebody do something. Yeah.
It was just such a perfect moment, because I just know like everybody everywhere is just having such a hard time now for a myriad of reasons. and it was just such a clear, like, we laughed so fucking hard because all you can do is laugh.
You know what I hadn't, like, I feel like I mentioned this in another instance, but I wanted to bring it up since we're talking about, like, kids coming up with the idea for the games itself, for the, betting. It's also another way that they're using children,
Mm-hmm.
like the way they use children from the districts is much more like violent and horrible, but they're still like using kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're just doing it in another way.
Right.
And yet, in the case of Dean Highbottom, it seems to have kind of destroyed him, knowing that like he was the one who came up with this idea that was supposed to be a
theoretical
thought experiment.
Yep.
Yeah.
It what it also does, which is kind of genius, not only taking advantage of their imagination and using their, their ability to imagine these things, but and because of the class, and I mean like the class of students, but also mean the social class of the students, it's making all of them complicit in this thing. Mm-hmm. Right, in a way, so that as they move into adulthood, into their powerful positions, because they are all from like well-off, powerful families, as they move, through life, they will bear some responsibility for the brutality of this. And so when Highbottom is like, we're all in the arena now, like, yeah, you are, and and these kids are as complicit as the adults are, even though they're just spitballing ideas in fucking math class. That's not math class. I know it's not math class, but you guys know what I mean.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to carry that into their adulthood. And to your point about Highbottom, it's really fucking hard to carry, seemingly so hard that it can drive someone to substance abuse.
Yeah. And I just want to remind everybody, Coriolanus is feeling deeply invested in this because he needs the money to get into school, which is, again, him being thrust into an artificial scenario. There is plenty of money for him to be able to go to school. The capital is fine. They could offer this education free, and they don't do that. And why don't they do that? Because they need everybody to be motivated by very specific needs and shames and it's like a way that they are all being controlled through desperation, right? Even though the desperation is on a totally different scale in a lot of ways, it still comes down to he and his family are going hungry when the food is available. It's out there. He can go to school and there's a full, buffet lunch provided for everybody.
Yep.
It's not like they don't have the resources to feed everybody, and they don't. And that's on purpose, to keep people willing to do shit like this, to claw for scraps, right, instead of it being like everybody's provided for, so we don't have to resort to horrific shit. We had, him watch somebody cut the leg off another human being to eat.
Yep.
And, granted, that was during the war and maybe the resources weren't there at the time, but like, seeing that,
it's going to leave a lasting
an impression. Yeah.
And like, not all the students are as destitute as Snow is. There are several kids in his class, including Sejanus, who have plenty of money, who don't need the prize. So you have to get them invested in some other way. You have to dangle a different type of carrot in front of them. And so you offer, prestige, it's going to be a shiny, like an example, a reflection of your family if you win, it's going to, like you're represent, like these people are from these families that are so prominent that, it's not the end of the world when they lose. It's like, oh, well, my tribute was sick and that's it. I'm out of the game. No big deal. No harm, no foul. Because they have the resources that they're still going to be able to continue their education. They don't need it the way Snow needs it. So to get them involved, you have to appeal to something else. And it's like pride and ego. Like, for some of these kids, this is just like a sporting match, like rooting for your team, you know, and you want the pleasure of saying your team won in that kind of vicarious way you get from watching sports. But that's their stake in it. That's it. And then you have people like Snow who don't have any other options, and they're using the promise of access to additional schooling as a way to control him and others that are in his situation. And then God forbid the rest of the people who aren't even like able to go to the academy, like, I guess fuck them.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I just like, I feel like it's so easy to really fall into the trap of being like, oh, there's not enough to go around. And there is enough to go around. It's just not going around.
Yeah.
And like that is what's at the foundation of his resentment of Sejanus, is that like Sejanus isn't one of us, but he came in here and he has everything that I should have. And again, that is very purposeful. You know, creating that sort of animosity between classes, between people.
Yep.
That is cultivated and fed like a little precious pet, because it's how we
what they call it,
make this like illusion,
the myth of scarcity.
Real.
Right? You convince everybody that there's just not enough to go around, and that will then allow people to justify the people who don't have enough. Well, there's just not enough to go around. Oh, you're homeless. There's just not enough to go around. Meanwhile, you guys all can, Google, we all know how many empty living places are. Like, the country's littered with, just empty fucking houses and empty apartments and empty shelter. And we have people on the street because we believe there's just not enough. Same with food.
Yeah.
People are literally starving here and around the world, and we throw so much food away. It's fucking sickening. And we do it with everything, so that we're so grateful that we have what we have, and so afraid of losing the little that we do have, that we become kind of selfish by design, Yeah.
Anyway, sorry guys to be very depressing, but that's the Hunger Games for you. So, after lunch, there is a pack of 3 that surfaces.
Yeah.
And let's see. The 3 strode across the arena until they were directly under Lamina's beam. She took no notice at first, but Tanner smacking a sword blade against one of the poles brought her to attention. Lamina sat up and surveyed the pack, and she must have sensed a change in the air, because she pulled out her axe and her knife and polished them on the flag. Which is a great symbolism.
I really did love that. I did too. I don't know. I mean, it's just a couple words, but I love that she uses the fucking flag to fucking get them weapons ready.
Festus shifted in his seat. Here we go. They'll never make it, said Pup in agitation. They're trained to work on ships. They climb ropes as part of it, Persephone pointed out. Rigging, said Festus. Yes, I get it. My father's a commander after all, said Pup. Rope climbing is different. The posts are more like trees. But Pup had been getting on everyone's nerves, and even the mentors without a tribute in the confrontation seemed eager to comment. What about masks? Masks, asked Vipsania. Or flagpoles, Urban chimed in. They won't make it, said Pup. Well, long story short, they make it.
They sure do.
Yeah. It's a kind of a drawn-out confrontation, but in the end, Lamina gets got.
Yeah.
In a pretty brutal fashion. And Pup does not take this well at all. He yells, and it's like when it's time for him to move to the losers section, he just like takes his chair and stalks over there in very like, yeah, exactly.
And then Snow is just like looking at him, and he's like, it looks like he's trying not to cry.
This is so like the fact that they are reacting this way, and it's just like it's purely about themselves. You know, there is something so incredibly gross about it all. After performing some kind of dance over Lamina's body, Tanner bounded over to them. Mizzen grinned and raised his hand for a victory slap. Tanner had just made contact when Coral drove the second trident into his back. He fell forward into Mizzen, who, braced by the pole, shoved him away. Tanner turned in a circle, one hand swatting uselessly behind him as if to dislodge the trident, but the barbed tines were buried deep. He fell to his knees, his expression more wounded than shocked, and collapsed face down in the dirt. Mizzen finished him with a knife to the neck. He then went back and sat against his pole, while Coral tore a strip of fabric from Lamina's flag cloth and began to bind his knee. At the studio, Lucky's face stretched into a comedic mask of shock. Did you see what I just saw?
Yeah. There's a moment right after Lamina falls that Snow is watching, and it is Coral and Mizzen, and there's like a moment where Snow is like, is she getting ready to turn on him? But that doesn't happen. But so it's funny that he had his instinct, like something, his body senses were tingling, like that the idea his pack was going to turn, but he had just, picked the wrong two. But yeah, so the District 3 kids turned on the they're District 4 from Tridents, or the swimming fishing place, right? Whatever. 2 kids from the same district turned on the other kid from the other district.
It's true, yes. But yeah, I give up after a certain point. I'm just kind of trying to keep track of that because, like, ultimately, it doesn't even really matter until we get to the very end and see who wins. Treach came out long enough to snag Lamina's axe and for Vipsania to feed him. Tesley retrieved another fallen drone and collected some food from Urban. Little else occurred until late afternoon when Reaper wandered out of the barricade, rubbing sleep from his eyes. So he does his thing with pulling the bodies off to the side. Jessup is the only one left out, and Reaper doesn't touch him, which makes sense. Perhaps he is contagious. And he cuts off another piece of the flag to cover the bodies, and puts a cape on, like makes a cape out of the piece that Lamina had been using. Again, everybody is just outraged by the way he's been using the flag. Everybody just fucking get your shit in order, for God's sake. I can't. And then we have another moment with Festus being like, Clemencia, are you ever going to feed this guy? And her being like, basically, no, I won't be feeding him because he hasn't earned it. Don't know what earning it looks like from her. She's not very specific about that, but she knows he hasn't done it yet, whatever it is.
And she says, I'm a good manager, and this could be a long Hunger Games. Looking at Snow. And it's not like I've abandoned him. Also, looking right at Snow.
She's still so mad.
He thinks for a second maybe he should ask her to go to the Citadel with him for his appointment. And
that's fucked up.
Right? Dude. He's like, he could use some company and she could visit her snakes.
He's messy. So let's see. 5 o'clock rolls around. He couldn't say he missed Domida, and certainly not Pup, but he missed the buffer they'd provided between him and the likes of Clemencia, Vipsania, and Urban. Even Hilarious, with his woeful tales of being a Heavensbee, had become a strain. I don't know what that means. What are his woeful tales? Do you remember this?
I don't remember anything specific. I mean, I know the context of the sentence, but I can't remember him specifically griping about being a Heavensbee. Maybe there was talk of the huge burden that it placed on him being related to whoever the mayor, what do you call it? The president is.
Maybe.
Is he the one that's related to the president? One of these kids is related to the president, but I can't remember if it's Heavensbee.
I don't think it's hilarious because I feel like I would have really remembered that. Because hilarious. Like, how do you not remember that? But I could be wrong. So this is when he goes back to the Citadel, gets his stitches removed, and he's told to wait. An unusual energy filled the lab. Quick footsteps, raised voices, impatient commands. Coriolanus listened hard, but he couldn't make out the cause of the activity. He did hear the words arena and games more than once and wondered about the connection. When Dr. Gaul finally appeared, she made only a cursory check of his stitches. And she says, "Did you know Gaius Breen?" And he's like, "Did I know him? Interesting." And he's like, "Well, yeah, I know him." And she's like, "Yeah, well, he's dead." And it's a real, again, sort of like, did she kill him sort of moment for me, because I can't help but feel as if maybe that is the way that she would play this and try and extract some more rage from the viewers to see if that like spices things up at all. I don't know. Maybe I'm really just kind of going off the deep end with my suspicions of her. I mean,
maybe she's been so fucking creepy and malignant that these suspicions are warranted.
That's true. That's true. That's true. And she says, "I'm telling you, but you can't tell anybody else." And she says, "Trust that there will be repercussions." But she doesn't get too specific. So he's leaving, and these assistants come out of one of the labs with a tank full of those fucking snakes. And they're talking to each other. Did she say to bring the cooler? Not that I remember. I thought they'd been fed. We better check. If we're wrong, she'll go ballistic. And they go into the elevator. And, "Sorry, it'll be back in a minute," the second assistant said. "No problem," Coriolanus repeated, but he was beginning to suspect a very great problem.
I said no problem.
Activity in the lab.
But I meant all the problems.
All the problems. "Where are you taking the snakes?" he asked, as innocently as possible. "Oh, just to another lab," said one, but the assistants exchanged a look. "Come on, the cooler takes two." The pair receded into the lab, leaving him alone with the tank. "In fact, it was your girl who gave me the idea." His girl, Lucy Gray. And as he is looking at them, he is suddenly realizing that the colors of the snakes match the ruffles on her dress. And is starting to get a real bad feeling about this whole thing. And he gets the bright idea to drop the handkerchief that she had held into the tank so that if she does encounter these snakes, her scent will be familiar and they won't attack her.
Yeah. The way that... Now, there's a couple of ways this could go, right? So the first thing I want to say that's not necessarily related to the second thing I'm going to say is that the way that Snow is able to think like, or seemingly think like Gaul thinks, is, I think, evidence that there's something in him that she sees and connects to and wants to exploit. Because I don't know how many other people would. Maybe I'm overstating it. Maybe it isn't that much of a leap to go. Because what he does is after he thinks about in fact, it was your girl. He remembers that Lucy had dropped a snake down the dress of somebody, right, when she was at her reaping, and supposedly that is what helps him make the connection that Dr. Gaul is planning on using snakes as weapons. But then also, this whole encounter with the two techs who happen to be moving the snakes right as he happens to be there could also have been orchestrated, because she might be curious what Snow would do with that information if he had it. And she just might like to see just for funsies. So I don't know if I believe this is just an accidental occurrence, like, I don't know. I don't know. She's got me also being wildly paranoid because she's so awful.
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm not the only one, though, that starts to just, like, see shadows everywhere. Yeah. Dr. Gaul shaped shadows.
Like, maybe we're giving,
on the walls.
Like, I wonder if I'm giving her too much credit, maybe she's not like this omnipotent mastermind that's pulling the strings everywhere. But it sure as fuck seems like she is.
A little bit. So he drops the kerchief in, and then chapter 19 starts with him being like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? Like, this is going to be so bad for me. Is there any way that they can, like, find out that I did this? And he's really not sure. There's just so much,
like, he's trying to,
he doesn't really feel like there's, like, regret exactly, but just sort of, like, the situation is so impossible.
I mean, I love this whole train of thought as he attempts to distance himself from what he just did as far as, like, evidence. So he's just like, you didn't even know the snakes were going to arena. They told you that they were just going to a lab. And if they do end up in the arena, Lucy Gray might not even ever see them. It's a huge fucking arena, and the snakes, they're not just going to go around attacking people right or left, are they? You got to step on them or something. And even though she did run into a snake and it didn't bite her, how would anybody be able to trace it back to him? It required just too much information, too much security, too much high security knowledge, and a handkerchief with her scent. Nobody is going to understand why he even had that. This is all going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And then he starts worrying about this line that he's been noticing he's been crossing quite frequently with abandon. And he ends up saying, that's it. Not doing anything else anymore. No more shady strategies, he says. No more rationalization. From now on, I'm going to live honestly. And if I end up as a beggar, at least I'll have my dignity. I'll be a decent beggar. And then by the time he's done doing all this in his brain, he looks up and he realizes that he's halfway to the Plinth's apartment.
No more shady dealings.
Right? Right.
Okay.
Why not pop in? He says immediately.
This is such a painful chapter to me because the Plinths seem like decent people, and the absolute utter contempt that he has for Ma Plinth is so gross to read.
It's so gross. It is probably, it's good that it's included, right? Because if it weren't, it would be very easy to start being sort of enamored with Snow. You start to be like, oh, he's poor and he's just trying to better his family, and oh, he's really trying to help Lucy Gray, and it doesn't. And the fact that helping Lucy Gray also helps him is like doesn't just take away from the help he's giving her. But these reminders of what goes on in his head and his private thoughts are so crucial, to who he is as a person, and nothing, I think, puts it in more stark relief than this contempt he has for Mrs. Plinth specifically. Whoops, sorry, I hit the mic. Because she is nothing but gracious. She's nothing but generous. She's so nice. She's so clearly lonely. She doesn't want to be here. Like, there's nothing that I've seen so far that says that she is anything but just a delightful little mom who's worried about her son,
Yeah.
And the way he talks about her is how I feel like rich people talk about all of us all the time. It feels so fucking real and like authentic that it makes me like feel embarrassed. Like, I'm like, oh, I am poor and I feel judged when he's talking about Mrs. Plinth in this way. Yeah.
I really love that you're saying that because it's like, this is me, like somebody who is just wanting to like live their life and enjoy their little comforts and have safety with their family, and they got torn away from everything that actually meant anything to them because family and friends. But it's just like it's just remarkable how impossible it seems for Snow to like put himself in her position and understand what it would be like to be taken away from everything that and everybody He doesn't have family anymore. Yeah. Can he understand that if you do have family and you just are forced to like leave them, that it might be, but no, he doesn't ever really think that way. It's always about how much money they have and the fact that they're doing great and he isn't, and how dare they even like complain about it.
And also, like the things that he judges Mrs. Plinth about specifically are all things that are evidence of her lack of good breeding, right? These are the sort of the sort of affectations or social norms that nobody teaches you. You have to grow up in it to know it, right? And if you don't grow up in it, like, you're always going to stick out as a sore thumb. And we made the comparison before with Mrs. Plinth, but I just really think it bears repeating. It's so like that scene in Succession where whichever son it is brings this very like,
it's Greg, I think.
Greg, yes, it is. That's who it is. Greg brings like a commoner to the family home, and they all stand around and make fun of her because her purse is too big. Like, it's not the designer, it's not the maker of the purse, right? It's not that it's not the right brand, but just the fact that she is carrying this big bag that means that's signaling all this information about her. And she doesn't even realize that's what the information she's giving away about herself. And they make all of these quick judgments and assumptions that are probably correct, right? As much as we don't want it to be. But yeah. And that scene fucking wrecked me. I felt so called out. Like, not that I'm like trying to move in those circles. Like, I don't even have access to it. But like the thought of how humiliating it would be to have to think that you are sending like the best message about yourself and people being able to clock you immediately that you don't go here. She's got this delightful little cozy kitchen, and she asks if it's even okay to have it in the kitchen, or maybe she should serve it up in their living room the way the Snows had done it, which apparently is the proper way to do it. You don't have anybody in your kitchen. Kitchen is where your servants go. You don't go down and eat or do anything in the kitchen. Her kitchen sounds lovely. Who doesn't want to go down in there and have some pie and some milk? What are you talking about? Ugh.
I love too that she mentions like a couple different things that he could have, because she's just cooking up a storm down here. She's making all kinds of
stuff. I love this.
And at one point she's like, there's custard as well. The Avox is like that because it's easy for them to swallow. And the only thing that he can think, instead of thinking about how kind it is that she's like considering what would be good for the Avoxes, is just like, oh, how pitiful that she's making food for people who can't even taste it.
My God.
It's just like, that's not the point, dude, but he doesn't understand that. He just,
Nope. And he is aware how insecure she feels in his presence. He says, that it was as if nothing she could offer would be good enough. Well, you know what, sir? You don't think it would be good enough.
Evidently not.
Right? So stop trying to make it sound like she's crazy and insecure. She is correct. Nothing she can give or do or say to you would be good enough.
That's the other part too, is that like this woman is 30 years older than him probably, and she feels insecure around him. how awful must that be
Mm-hmm.
as somebody who's like a grown woman to be around a literal like teenager and feel deeply judged by them because of this sort of thing. Not to say that not all of us feel judged around teenagers, but it's got a different energy when it's something like this.
I like wanted to desperately tell her, you could buy and sell him 1,000,000 times over. Don't be fucking.
And maybe you should.
You're right. Like, don't be fucking, bending over backwards to appease him. Like, he's so beneath you, like in every manner except like family name. Ugh, I wanted her to fucking. I know she wouldn't, because she would never. But I just want her to know.
If she had just poisoned him here, how much of a headache could that have saved us all?
Saved all of us. And so then she feeds him. And he gets to have pie and ice cream, which is something he, like, and he's not even fucking grateful.
No. I really hate him. I really hate him so much.
Yeah, her table with mismatched chairs and her little needlepoint that says home and her little doodads. And he understands that these are probably the only things she was able to bring back from her home. And he calls it pitiful.
Yep.
The way she clung to that backward mountain region. Poor little displaced person without a hope of ever fitting in, spending her day making custard for Avoxes who would never taste them, and pining for the past while he's eating her fucking food. And his taste.
Well, he does nothing but pine for the past too.
Listen,
when we had money and we had our name and we had our dignity.
How does he not see the parallels?
He's dense.
He is dense.
He's a dense boy.
Mom might be pathetic, but she was something of an artist in the kitchen, is the best he can allow himself to say to think of her.
So after they have a little sort of back and forth, let's see, she says that her husband wants to see him, and he thinks, perfect, here it comes. He's going to do the thing where he offers me money, and it does not go that way.
It does
Coriolanus is distressed
at the
fact that evidently our understanding is not an understanding of any kind.
Yeah, this is the first time we really get to meet the father, right? We saw him at the press conference announcing the new prize. We've heard about him from both Ma Plinth and from Sejanus Plenty, but this is our first real introduction to him. And it wasn't what I expected at all. It really wasn't. I thought he was going to like throw money at Snow. And he doesn't. Instead,
what do you think about that?
I think that like the questions that he asked Snow he was just like trying to figure Snow out. Like, what's your deal? And first thing he does is tells him that, you look just like your dad. And, but you're not at all like him at all. You seem like you have kindness to you. And then wonders like, maybe you get that from your mom. Are you like your mom? And meanwhile, Snow is like, I have lost control of this conversation. This isn't going, like he really thought he was going to walk in and like maneuver this man into a position that was most beneficial to himself. And that does not happen. And I think that the father was wondering if Snow was going to have the balls to be like a business guy. Like,
oh, interesting.
Like,
okay.
Like, is he going to come at me and like ask for money?
Ask for it?
Or like, talk about like what I know about your son, or just be like, anything. Like, is he like his father in the way that he would come into the room and make demands? Which is my take on Snow's father. For everything I've heard about him, he sounds like the type of man that would have walked into that room and been like, look, this is what it is. What are we doing? Let's make a deal, because we're both men of the world. We're both businessmen. We understand what's at stake here. How do you want to play this? And it's almost like he was waiting for that. And then when Snow doesn't do it, I think the father is just like, well, I guess you're not like your dad, are you? Okay.
That's interesting.
What'd you think? I take it you had a completely different take.
No, I didn't really know what to make of it. So I'm going to read this conversation. So, you're like your father. I hear that a lot. Did you know him? Our business overlapped at times, but you're nothing like him, really. Nothing at all, or you'd never have gone into that arena after my son. It's impossible to imagine Crassus Snow risking his life for mine. I keep asking myself why you did it. He's my friend. Even though what he's thinking is I didn't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how many times I hear that, it's difficult to believe. But even from the beginning, Sejanus singled you out. Maybe you take after your mother. She was always gracious to me when I came here on business before the war, despite my background, the very definition of a lady. Are you like your mother? I'd like to think I am in some respects. In what respects? Well, we shared a fondness for music. Did they? She liked music and he didn't hate it, he guessed.
Mm-hmm.
Music, huh? Said Mr. Plinth, as if Coriolanus had said something as frivolous as puffy clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think we both believe that good fortune was something to be repaid on a daily basis, not taken for granted, he added. He had no idea what that meant, but it seemed to register with Mr. Plinth. He thought it over. I'd agree with that. Oh, good, yes, well, so. Sejanus, Coriolanus reminded him. Sejanus, thank you, by the way, for saving his life. No thanks necessary. As I said, he's my friend. Good. And it says, now was the time for the money, the refusal, the persuasion, the acceptance. Well, I guess you should get home. Your tribute's still in the games, right? Oh, yes, you're right. I just wanted to check on Sejanus. Will he be back in school soon? No telling, said Mr. Plinth, but thanks for stopping by. Of course. Tell him he's missed. Good night. Night. Not even a handshake. So I like your interpretation of just trying to see, like, how is he going to behave in this situation? Because I really didn't know what to think about this. It definitely seemed like he was trying to get the measure of him, but I didn't really know, like, what that even meant. What the questions meant that he was asking, and the idea that he is like, oh, I've dealt with your father and I know how he would have behaved in this situation. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And I love too that he's not impressed with Snow's response to how I'm like my mother. Where I think Plinth would have been more impressed if because Coriolanus doesn't really believe it. Like, all this, I did it because he's my friend. But then when asked, like, the why of it, why? Because the question isn't just he's my friend. The question is, why is he your friend? Why is he your friend? And the answer would be, something meaningful. Like, if he would say something like, well, my mother taught me, to be great. Like, cause the dad even says, your mom was always gracious to me despite my background. The very, and Snow doesn't pick up on how important that was to him. So, like, Snow could have, like, played that. He could have been like, well, yeah, my mother always taught me to treat people, with respect, despite their background, and to judge them. He could have really, really spun that shit. But because he doesn't believe it, he doesn't do it. And I don't think that the dad buys this, oh, well, he's just my friend. But I don't think he was convinced. But also because Snow doesn't, like, approach it the way his father may have approached it, the dad is like, well, I guess I don't have to come out my pockets then.
I wonder, because, like, the way that Snow says, I think we both believed good fortune was something to be repaid on a daily basis, not taken for granted. I think that may have made him think a little bit more of Coriolanus because he didn't see it for the signal that it's supposed to be.
Mm.
Like, Coriolanus is saying this with the thought that, like, oh, I am trying to remind you that I am not in the position you are, and you could do me a favor and also repay me for the thing that I did. And I'm wondering if, like, maybe he takes it as, like, my mother was doing that, repaying her good fortune and not taking it for granted by being kind to you, you know? And because I don't feel like he comes away from this with a bad impression of him exactly.
But when you say, like, trying to remind him that I'm not as in a good position as you are, like, Plinth doesn't know that the Snows are broke.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, that Coriolanus is saying this, like, trying to get him to go down a certain path, but Plinth isn't coming at it with that context, so he doesn't see what Coriolanus is saying there.
Oh, right.
So I feel like he may take it as Coriolanus saying, like, I try to share my good fortune with other people.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh.
And so that makes him look good, actually.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm convinced that this makes him look good. He does tell him that I agree with that sentiment, but that's different from being, I agree with that isn't the same as I believe what you're saying is true. Right? Like somebody somebody who I know is like a fucking stark raving mad racist can put up a fucking Martin Luther King, don't judge a man by his color. Right? And I can both simultaneously agree with that quote and also know that the person that posted it does not mean it in its the truth of it, right? Like it's right. Taking it out of context. He doesn't agree with the spirit in which that quote is taken from. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yep.
And I kind of feel like that's what he's saying, because he's like, yeah, I agree with that. He doesn't say I agree with you. Or, yeah, that's exactly the way I try to live. He just goes, yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, I do agree that good fortune should be repaid. I'm not so certain that you are acting like in good faith with my son, though, I think is where the father is sitting. But that's just me being paranoid.
No. I don't think it's even paranoid. Like, I think that I am maybe not giving him that much credit, and you're giving him more credit in his interpretation of Snow. So it just really depends on, like, how much do you think that he can see through him? And I think I've been giving him a lot of credit without really considering how well he knew Coriolanus's father and how much of an influence that probably has on everything.
Right.
So taking that into account, maybe he does see through him more than I think he does.
Right. I think that even though it's not talked about a lot, and honestly, this is a thought that's occurring to me in real time, which is why these podcasts are so fucking long. That we had heard about, like, the father only through Sejanus's, like, and some from the mom, from their point of view, right? And all we know is that this is a man who's made a shit ton of money and is simply buying his way into society, and that is objectively not a good thing, because his family is very unhappy with the way he's moving. But if you're the type of man that's become that successful and is willing to throw money at literally anything that's in his way or at anything that could benefit him, and that he's been dealing with capital people who think of him the very same way Snow thinks of this family, I think that the dad is much more hip than maybe, you know what I mean? I think he's got to, you know what I'm saying? Like, where I'm headed with that.
Yeah. That's interesting. I also can't help but think that maybe if he didn't get, like, the vibe, like a definitive vibe about Coriolanus here, it could be like, I'm not going to give you money, and I'm going to see how you treat my son after you don't get paid for it. You know, just keep an eye out for how his energy might change now that he realizes there's no reward in it necessarily.
Yeah. And that brings up an interesting point because we know that Sejanus is being like heavily medicated right now for his injuries. We don't know when he's returning to school. So we don't know when or if ever. I'm sure they will have more interactions. I don't think Sejanus is out of the story yet, but we don't know when the two of them will have an opportunity to be together again. I would think, if I was going to throw out a theory, is I don't know if Snow is like, he's like very upset after this, but he's also like really disoriented by the way things went. I'm curious if Snow will be like, well, I just need to visit Sejanus and maybe, I can work him into getting his father to give me something, but like not being forthright about it, but like manipulating him in some fashion. Sejanus is always so eager to give Snow anything and everything. I'm very curious how he's going to play this. He literally would only have to tell Sejanus, I don't have the money for school, and Sejanus would have that check within 5 minutes. But
that's true.
But Snow would have to admit it, and I don't know if he can do that.
There's the rub.
So, so that's how that fucking goes. That's how that master plan worked out for him.
Coriolanus thought about what it had felt like to be in the arena where there were no rules, no laws, no consequences to one's actions. The needle of his moral compass had swung madly without direction. Survival driving everything. There had been days during the war when they'd all been too scared to leave the apartment, when lawlessness had made even the capital an arena. Yes, the lack of law, that was at the heart of it. So people needed to agree on laws to follow. Was that what Dr. Gaul had meant by social contract? The agreement not to rob, abuse, or kill one another? It had to be. And the law required enforcement, and that was where control came in. Without the control to enforce the contract, chaos reigned. The power that controlled needed to be greater than the people, otherwise they would challenge it. The only entity capable of this was the capital. So he barely fills a page here. He isn't really like... he isn't exactly inspired.
He's not, because that little paragraph could have been like a 7-page paper, because he's really but he just gets to the heart of it so quickly that everything else feels like filler. So, you know what I'm saying? But like, he really gets to the heart of it. That's everything. That's it right there. In those like 6 sentences.
That's what she sees in him, I guess. That he's the only one who like answered her questions correctly about like the control aspect of everything immediately.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't like any of this, Corio. No. What are you doing?
And it takes him a long time to get this little bit that he was able to put on paper, and has terrible dreams. And then we should mention that he leaves the plinths with no money, but a ton of food. So that's really important. And I feel like he's not nearly as grateful for that as he should be.
No, he sees it as a consolation prize. And I was just like, I know that you need money to keep your home, but also you do need to like stay alive. And this lady is really doing a good job on that for you.
So yeah, he makes his way to school and has like a smorgasbord to choose from and eats a bunch of everything. And then they have assigned seating now in the mentor station. And Snow manages to stay in the back row, which is like a small blessing.
Oh, wait, doesn't he like, because I can't remember. Yeah, he eats a bunch of Ma Plinth's food, and then later on, it's the lima beans, right?
Yeah, lima beans is for lunch, and he's like, he doesn't even eat it. He swaps his plate with somebody else, and plays it off like, oh, I can't eat lima beans anymore. It makes me think of the war. And the kid is like, yeah, that's how I am with oatmeal.
My grandmother was like that with lima beans.
Lima beans think of the war. Are disgusting. They don't remind me of the war, maybe in a past life, and that's why I cannot even with them, because I say to lima beans.
Agreed.
There's just nothing good about them, right?
They're so slimy.
Oh, they're gross. Like, how are you mushy and slimy? Like pick a struggle. Oh God, they're so gross. They're so gross. Ugh. Like I haven't had a lima bean in over 40 years, and I still haven't recovered from the last time I had one.
Oh God, that's funny. So this is when we go back to the games. Fucking Lucky has his bird out, who's definitely starting to like not do okay.
This poor bird.
Jessup's body has been finally moved along with everybody else's. So I guess he got over his fear of it being contagious. I don't know. And then we have Wovey, the sick tribute that nobody has seen hide nor hair of, finally coming out into the open, and everybody just being like, oh, okay, there she is. And who is it that's her mentor?
Heavensby.
Hilarious. Yeah. And he's like really excited about this. The girl is like clearly very close to death.
Mm-hmm.
She is so starved and just in like really awful shape. And she gets a bottle of water and she takes a sip from it and immediately goes still.
Yeah, he's just like so excited to see. He's like punching away on his communicuff about to send in, fresh water and food for her. And she picks up this half empty bottle, and drinks the last little bit of dregs that's in it. And yeah, she dies. She has a little trouble trying to like get a new bottle of water and open it. And then she just leans back and weird liquid comes out of the side of her mouth and she goes still. And everybody is like, what the fuck just happened?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
And somebody says, I think she's dead. And Hilarious is like, no, she's just resting.
Oh my God.
There's just something about that I just...
He's in denial. Yeah, it becomes very clear that like, yeah, she's gone. And Snow is like, shit, was that rat poison?
Yeah, he's starting to wonder like, oh, is that the first strike that, and thinking that maybe like it could be even that Lucy chose somebody who was already ill to target because it would be less detectable. That nobody would think, oh, what could have killed her so suddenly because she's already so obviously close to death.
Why would we think that if this is just a random bottle that Lucy left out? Like, is it because it's empty and like already opened and like she would have to be like
it's
really,
half empty,
really desperate to drink it and not just take one of the other bottles? I mean, there are not other bottles there though with water in them. He has to send her. Hilarious has to send in more water and food.
Right. I'm not understanding what your question is.
My question is like the implication that Lucy would have targeted Wovey because she would be the only one that would bother picking up a half empty bottle and trying to drink it because she's so sick. Is that what you mean?
Not necessarily that it was like her, that she would bother, but simply that it was left close to her. Just the proximity of it, I think. Okay.
Gotcha.
But
I thought that
I could be wrong.
I thought that this was all happening over where, closer to where Jessup had died. I don't think I peeped that it was like really right outside of her tunnel. So that's what
I'm not sure.
I missed.
I'm just repeating what he is thinking about. Coriolanus.
Okay.
Because that's the thought that crosses his mind is like maybe she had even picked her because it would be less detectable. But I don't have a good idea of the layout of the arena at all. I just want everybody to understand that whenever like I'm told something is happening in a certain area, that doesn't really mean anything to me. I'm not keeping track of that and I can't recall.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha.
If you tell me that that's unlikely, I believe you. If you tell me it's very likely, I also believe
right.
you. I don't know.
I missed the part. Like, I missed the part where he says that maybe she even chose frail Wolvie as a target because she was already sick. So that's why I was like, wait, what's happening here? But yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because gotcha. Sorry, folks.
So yeah, she dies, and then we have Reaper come out, and there's a weird moment where he grabs an apple, and then he stops and he looks at Wolvie's face, and he drops the apple and starts to just pull her body along with all the others, which Coriolanus is like, oh, he knows that it was whatever she drank that killed her. Meanwhile, everybody else, especially Clemencia, because Reaper's her mentor or her tribute, she's taking the fact that he didn't eat that food as evidence that he does not deserve food.
This is so crazy.
Because this is such a foolish move on his part.
This is so... Do you see what I'm dealing with? She says, my tribute's mentally unbalanced. Meanwhile, he's done like the smartest thing ever just now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so frustrating. But
I think Festus even apologizes to her for like calling her heartless because she wouldn't give him food.
Sorry about earlier.
Like, apologize.
Yes, you're right.
It's just crazy.
And that's it. There's no more like suspicion about Wolvie dying. Like everybody is just like, well, she looked terrible. Death was imminent, and there it is. And Snow starts to be like, I really wish I could fucking be in touch with Lucy Gray. Like, we need to update a strategy. This hiding isn't going to continue to work with so few people left behind. Maybe we need to switch it up. And then he's like, well, fuck, I have no idea what's happening. She could still be planting poison food and water all over the place. Like, I don't know what she's doing. And then he does this thing, y'all. I don't know why this was so funny to me. I think because it's just so absurd because of who he is. But the idea that he's like trying to channel her,
psychically contact
her. Like they, let me help Lucy Gray, or at least let me see that you're all right. I miss you. It's not funny, but it's just ridiculous is all. And not because I think the idea of communicating telepathically is ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous that he thinks he's capable of having a connection with anybody that would allow this type of communication.
Well, he doesn't though. Like it says specifically like he didn't believe in it, but he did it anyway because it's just like gives him a sense of maybe, like. There's a couple things where the lima beans later, he's like, were those a bad omen? And then he's like, I cannot be getting like superstitious right now. This is not the time.
So what happens next? He's thinking to himself that Lucy Gray should probably be getting hungry. So he's going to like figure out when is the next time to send her food. And then there's not much going on in the arena. And I think
then we have Dr. Gaul's interview.
Yeah, the announcement of the kid dying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they all have to come up with remembrances and whatnot. And then she says, we like in response to what was done to our kids, we've planned something special for the district's children.
Yeah.
And they tune in, and this is when they see all of the snakes get released. And it takes a little while for it to become clear this is what is happening. But as soon as the snakes are visible, Clemencia really begins to flip the fuck out.
They're all watching, and then one of the kids comes running out of a tunnel, and people are like, what the fuck's going on with that? Like, because they still haven't seen the snakes drop in yet. And then the audience is just like, something special. What's happening? And then they start seeing the drone come in, and it's a oversized drone, bigger than they've seen before. And it's fucking snakes. And Snow goes over, and he says when he grabs her, not sure if the move was meant to be comforting or confining.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really stood out to me. And she goes rigid because she's clearly traumatized, and he's whispering in her ear that they're not here. They're in the arena. You're safe. But he also holds on to her for dear life.
Yep. Yeah, this is so like, I really wonder what Dr. Gaul's like thinking about this as she watches this girl freak out, or if she even notices. Probably doesn't even notice.
That's a good point.
Kidding?
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. I wonder if she caught that. I mean, it's hard to say because she's being interviewed, so her attention is elsewhere, but it also seems like she doesn't miss anything.
Yeah.
That kind of feeling. So I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out later that she saw that moment. But if she didn't see that moment, I would also be like, well, yeah, that makes sense.
And she says that they're only snakelets, but they can easily outrun a human, which is insane to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. They're designed to hunt humans and reproduce rapidly, so any casualties can be swiftly replaced. They're designed to hunt humans.
Yep. And at this point, one kid is already gone. Like the kid Cert gets bitten a bunch of times and just drops like immediately. And then the other one like climbs up this pole, and she's like, "Oh, and when they get older, they're going to be able to climb those poles too," which is horrifying.
I forgot that she said that. Oh my God, this is like a nightmare.
Mm-hmm. And
Jesus.
Then, so they're watching all this, and Dr. Gaul's giving her interview, and then the mics pick up somebody screaming like in the distance, and Snow immediately is like, "Fuck, they got Lucy. The handkerchief didn't fucking work." But it's a different kid. It's the Mizzen kid comes running out with Coral behind with a snake dangling from her arm. So she's running with a snake dangling from her arm, which is like, I don't like it.
Yep.
And dozens more charging for her the moment she hits the ground. Yeah.
So then, somewhere ever so faintly, someone was singing in the arena. His girl. Lucy Gray emerged from her tunnel, moving in slow motion and backward. Now, this is one of the moments that is really, really particularly glaring in terms of how bad this audiobook narrator is.
Oh, no.
You guys, if you're reading along and you're doing it with the audiobook, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. But our guy is over here just saying la 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 la
oh,
la
no.
la la
oh no
la 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 la.
That's no good.
This man is a musical theater star.
Who is it again?
What's his name? Fontaine, that played Greg, the original Greg in Crazy.
And right. Gotcha. Okay. Oh yeah, he's singer and a dancer and all that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
All that jazz, as I say, singer and dancer.
All that now. But yeah, it just offended me so deeply that he couldn't even be bothered to like do a little tune of some kind. La 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 la, like he's fucking.
Oh my God!
Just what?
Why? What did he do for the songs when Lucy performs?
He just reads them.
Oh no!
I know. And it's especially egregious after we had like the amazing Tatiana Maslany performance where she sings and just emotes so beautifully, and her readings of certain scenes just will haunt me forever. And then we have this Joker who's phoning it in so hard that I'm surprised that he didn't get fired. Mm-hmm. But we just, this is such a music heavy book. And for him to not, for him to actually be a performer, a singer, and they don't give him music or ask for him to like come up with music blows my mind. Mm-hmm. If I saw that he was the narrator before listening, I would assume they hired him because he's a singer and this is a music heavy story, and that they were going to make something out of that performance, I would have been so disgusted.
Mm.
But I didn't find that out until afterward, who it was narrating. And so I was just retroactively. So anyway, so she is singing and sits down on the ground with her skirt spread out. And then
before she
is covered with the snakes.
Yeah, she comes out and they're following her like she's fucking playing one of those flutes, you know?
Yeah, the Pied Piper.
Mm-hmm. And or I was thinking of like, you know, the snake in the basket, and then like,
oh yeah, like a charmer.
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Snake charmer. That's exactly what I was looking for. And she's walking, and they're just like, all of these snakes are just following her as she walks very carefully. And then, yeah, like you said, she sits down, and none of the snakes are like poised to attack. And they're coming out from everywhere. They're coming out of the other tunnels as well. It's not just the ones that were like in her tunnel. They're coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
And then the last couple of sentences are just so like, oh, complete full body shudder. No, thank you.
As the snakes swarmed her, the faded fabric vanished, leaving her with a brilliant skirt of weaving reptiles.
No, I say to you.
Yeah.
No.
I am not particularly afraid of snakes, and I still thank you, but pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not like, yeah, I guess the way you said it is fair. I'm not like skeeved by snakes, you know. I'm not like, oh my God. But you know, when I've encountered them in the wild, it's generally less than pleasant. And everything that's happening right now with them all like waving around her legs and her feet and her lap to the point that you can't even see her dress, like her yeah, that's too much snake.
Agreed.
If you've ever asked yourself how much is too much, this amount is too much. For clarification,
Owen's grandmother hates snakes, and I remember her telling me with like this horrible look in her eye about a time when she got out of the car and there was a snake on the ground right next to her, and she like jumped back in the car and then backed over the snake, and it got caught somehow and flew up and landed on her windshield. And she was just like having a fucking like a complete panic attack. And I was just like, oh my God.
Listen, for a second, I thought you were going to say that shit flipped through the window into the car, and we were about to disconnect this whole podcast.
No, her window was closed because that's how scared she was. She would have made sure of that. God. But yeah.
Thank God.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to think like a moth would be the closest I can. You guys don't know. If you have ever been on a walk at night with me, you'd probably get to see me just absolutely lose my shit at a moth.
I got to see that.
Oh, God, I hate him so much. I hate him so much. Oh, why are they like that?
They're just so like awful. All up in your grill all the time. Like, can I help you, moth? Like, if they were just
they're so erratic.
Like, they were just out here on their moth business, I would be fine. Like, live and let live. But they're not. They always like are trying to fly up your nose. If you have glasses, a moth is going to go behind your glasses. It's going to fly right to your eyeballs and then get stuck between your eye and your glasses. Because
I have had so many moths hit my lips trying to get into my mouth.
Yes,
you guys, so often. Like, it's not an infrequent thing. Oh God, I hate them so much.
I just don't understand why they're like all up in your business.
They're supposed to be attracted to light.
Exactly.
It's dark in there. It's dark in my mouth. What are you doing there? Get out of there. Or they get caught in my hair. That's another one because like when you got curly hair.
When you have hair, there's going to be some shit that gets caught in it. All kinds of bugs. Yeah, it's I'm skeeving myself out. We got to stop. Gotta stop.
Sorry. Oh God, but yeah. So that's the end of the chapter, everybody. So we'll see how this goes. But they're not biting her. So clearly that handkerchief gambit worked. It's just, for how long? How, and how do you explain this?
Yeah, this is
after seeing them just like go on and attack so many people and then they don't with her.
Yep.
Like that's suspicious.
I mean, this.
You could just try and say like, "Oh, it's her beautiful voice."
I mean, I feel like that's what it's going to be. It's going to be like the Covey people know how to, ancient secrets of the sect. We have a way of communicating. Blah 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 blah. Music soothes the savage beast, or snake charming. That is a thing, right? That's a real thing. I think it's a real thing. So
I honestly don't know if it's like a trick or if it is real. I'm not sure. Isn't it music soothes the savage breast?
I've always heard beast because I watched a lot of Bugs Bunny when I was a kid.
Oh my God. Now I'm looking it up.
I'm looking up snake charming.
Soothes. Music hath charms to soothe a savage breast, to soften rocks or bend a knotted oak, is a line from William Congreve's 1697 play, The Mourning Bride. The line implies music, sounds, and rhythm can calm even someone with an aggressive or violent nature. But then, music soothes the savage beast is on TV tropes.
I told you. Looney Tunes.
Yeah. This phrase was coined by William Congreve. Okay, so they're claiming it's him that coined it, but they're quoting it wrong. So, according to this thing, yeah, apparently it's one of those malaprops. Malapropism is it mal? Because that's a misuse of a word, and this isn't the misuse of a word. It's just a frequently incorrectly quoted. So what do you call that? There's got to be a word for that,
just
right?
Misquote, but I don't know if anything that designates one that it's done frequently, just other than saying frequently misquoted as blah, blah, blah.
But anyway, maybe that's how they'll explain it. It's just the music.
Some
sort of ancient magics.
Couldn't find anything. I mean, I found plenty about snake charming, but too much to sift through to find out whether it's a gimmick or if it's actually something that's happening. It says it's the practice of appearing, which suggests that you're not actually doing anything. It's a practice of appearing to hypnotize a snake or often a cobra by playing and waving around an instrument called a punji. It's just commonly referred to as a performance over and over again. But nothing that gets into, I can't get to the nitty gritty of it because there's just so much fucking information. Yeah. So I don't know, guys, but I feel like that's the best you can do for the situation they put her in right now. I'll tell you what, if she can have control of the snakes, even if it just appears like she can control the snakes, right? That is going to do a lot for her, the perception of her standing in the arena and the power, air quotes, that she may have.
That's true.
Like if the other tributes believe she can command the snakes, where she's like now just kind of lulling them to be passive. If they take this as meaning she can control them, she should
Targaryen.
Yeah, right. No shit, right?
Yeah, it's interesting though.
Yeah, so I'm very, very curious to see how they play this. Yeah, probably we'll read when we get done, if it's just like the next chapter, just to see where it goes.
Well. All right. I'm going to say hi to new patrons because I haven't done that in a minute because our episodes have been so fucking long that by the time we reach the end of the chapter, I'm always just like, and that's a wrap. And I don't even check because both of us are like spent. And so apologies to everybody. But this week, let's see, let's do our little like, yeah, go. All right. We have got Diana Paolo, and Jeffrey Valente. Thank you so much to both of you for signing up, for becoming patrons, for supporting us. I hope that you guys are like digging into some of the patrons only stuff. I'm going to be adding some like new benefits to the $1 tier soon. Just putting up some stuff that is already finished ad free, because a lot of older stuff that I had posted on Patreon they're changing up the way Patreon works. And in the past, I wouldn't be able to select multiple titles at once and just make them all available to a new tier. I would have had to go into each individual post and scroll backward and find them all and undo and then redo, which is why I haven't done this. But soon they are going to be enabling me to access a bunch of posts at once. I'm so excited. There's a lot of stuff that I have been sort of like sitting on and wanting to do, but it was going to be so tedious as to be almost impossible. Tedious isn't an adequate enough word for how difficult it was going to be on some of that stuff. So I just keep an eye out. I'll be announcing it. And if you aren't already following us on Patreon, you definitely want to do that, because I am really posting all the announcements about new things that I'm offering and the changes that are going to be, if there's ever a week that we miss an episode or we decide to do something special, I'm going to be posting it on there before anywhere else. So patreon.com/unspoiled. You can follow for free and, eventually sign up for the paid tiers when you are able to. So go ahead and do that, guys, and show us some support. If you find yourself like really looking forward to our show every week, once a week, I feel like $5 a month for a weekly show is pretty reasonable. It's only $1.25 an episode. You can't even get a candy bar for $1.25 anymore. I mean, never mind the fact that this episode is currently at 2 hours and 22 minutes.
Hey, 222.
That's true. Yeah, that's a significant number for Rashawn. It's her birthday. All right, everybody. Thanks again so much for listening. We love you very much. Until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Are you coming to the tree where dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.